The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Game Podcast Network is brought to you by Nordic Fantasy. Get up to $1,000 deposit match when you sign up at Nordic Fantasy with the promo code SGPN. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Game Podcast here on the Sports Game Podcast Network. It is currently Sunday night, late night episode, June 22nd, around 11:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm your host, Scott Reichel, once again going solo for this pod. Time to get into the preview of Eastbourne and Mallorca, the two grass events, the final two grass events before Wimbledon. So we're going to break those down in a second. Good news, we have quarter odds as well on both events, so we actually have a pretty in-depth breakdown of the quarters, etc. for this episode. I know normally we have to wait out and hope that the books post lines for it. We actually got lines on the quarters, so we're going to break down the quarters as well as the outrights to win the event. For that, though, a brief recap of what happened in the last episode. Starting off for the lock and dog, we have now swept three straight shows. For the lock, we had Bublik and Medvedev over half a tiebreak at minus 130. Bit of a sweat there, a couple break points, but the second set did get to a breaker, so nice win for us on the lock. For the dog, nice win as well. Fought off one break point. We had Alcaraz and Lehecka first 6 games 3-3 at plus 105. So once again, a nice sweep. Third straight episode, had a pretty good read on the last couple of rounds in those two events. So we'll try to keep it rolling here in Eastbourne and in Mallorca. But once again, 3 straight sweeps. Happy about it. We'll try to make it 4 here in this episode. Now, looking at briefly what happened for the actual matches themselves, Alcaraz did end up winning a title. We did give that out as well at plus 100. Not going to pat ourselves on the back too much. It is an outright technically that we cashed. It felt pretty obvious, and he got there. A bit of a sweat with Munar and with Lehecka, each going to a pretty competitive match that ended up going 3 sets apiece. But still, Alcaraz won again in London, plus 100, and we'll see how he looks in Wimbledon as he tries to defend his title. But either way, nice job getting the job done there for plus 100. Bublik, though, ended up winning his second title in the event, as he won in straight sets against Medvedev. Medvedev had some chances to win that second set and punted them, as he had a set point in the 4-5 return game. He also led 4-1 in the tiebreak and lost 6 straight points to end the match. So Medvedev had some chances. It looked like he was going to coast in the breaker initially, as he did lead 4-1, and then did not win a point again. So there you go. Medvedev once again loses. He's not won a title in about 2 years, and we'll see how he does in Wimbledon. But Bublik, nice job by him, made the quarters in the French Open, carried over the form to Wimbledon. Tremendous amount of talent. The issue is always the, I'd say, mental focus, and it feels like he's finally starting to kind of tap into it, and it's the best tennis he's ever played. Nice win by him, beating Medvedev in straight sets and beating Sinner earlier in the event in 3. Nice job by Bublik to win another title on grass, and Alcaraz keeps rolling. Keeps looking great, and we'll see if he can defend his Wimbledon title in a week or so. Anyway, nothing else to really talk about. I thought the Alcaraz match went the way we thought it would. We thought Alcaraz would win in 3. We actually did pick Lehecka to win a set. We liked the over in that one. Lehecka, though, a bit of a bad beat, did not cover the spread just by going to 3 sets, as he lost the spread by 5. It's a bit of a heartbreaker there if he took the games. Bublik, though, ended up winning in straight sets, so all the overs ended up dying, and you ended up seeing, of course, a straight set win. So we were pretty, I'd say, selective with our choice from that matchup, because I got a decent amount of that match wrong. Thought Medvedev would win in a marathon. Did not happen, but we got the breaker as the locks. That worked out well, and the Alcaraz match worked out to our favor, too. So once again, a good episode for us. Ended up sweeping the lock and dog for the 3rd straight episode. Tried to make that happen again for the 4th time in a row. Now, before we get into the actual preview of the 2 events for the upcoming week, a brief reminder: you can support the show by liking, subscribing on YouTube, and a reminder you can also leave a rating and a review on Spotify or Apple. So if you listen to the podcast in live stream format, video format on YouTube, that's fine. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And a reminder, if you are listening to the podcast on audio only on Spotify or Apple, that's fine too. Don't forget to leave a rating and a review, though, to help the show grow. Plus, a reminder, check out the merch store. We have a lot of great merchandise on the SGPN merch store, including some tennis stuff. We have shirts, sweatshirts, and mugs. High quality, very affordable, and comfortable. Recommend getting yourself something there. And a reminder as well, we have more content on the network with the college experience guys, because they are doing the college football previews already. I know, it feels pretty early, but when you're breaking down every single team in the FBS, it's going to take some time. So if you want some college football previews for teams, check out the College Experience, where Kobe and Moneyline Mac preview every single FBS college football team. You don't want to miss it, so check that out as well. Now time to move on into the preview of the events here in Eastbourne and in Mallorca. So before we get into that, though, a brief look at the comments section. I see Big Chief being new to the channel. Welcome. Hopefully you've enjoyed the show for the last few days, and hopefully you enjoy the content. Also, I see Danny stopping by. Nice to see you again, Danny. If you are in the comment section, you can leave a message. I'll read it. If you have a tennis question, I'll answer it too. You know the drill, but if you are new, I know we finally got over 1,000 subscribers. We're at like about 1030 at the moment. So if you are new, comment whatever you want in the comment section in the live stream, and I'll read it. So there you go. Point is, though, time to move on into the event in Eastbourne. Now, for this event, this is basically the Fritz Invitational because he's won it multiple times. Fritz won it last year, beating Purcell in the final. To be honest, I had no recollection of that match at all. I just did not remember it whatsoever, but Fritz did win in I believe it was straight sets in the final. Cerundolo ended up beating Paul the year prior. That one I do remember because there were a bunch of rain-delayed matches, and it was chaotic trying to fit all the matches in, but Cerundolo did eventually beat Paul, I believe, in 3 sets in that one. Fritz beat Cressy. You saw Dimenauer beat Sonego, and I'm going pre-COVID. Fritz did beat Query in the final as well. So Fritz, once again, has won this title 3 times, but he has never defended his title. He's always had a gap year in between. So keep that in mind. Fritz, though, is trying to win his 4th title in Eastbourne. We'll see if he can get the job done in this event. Now, once again, a reminder, we have quarter odds. So we're going to break down the quarters. Starting off with the first quarter, you have the Fritz quarter at -110. Giron's at 5-1. Fonseca is at 6-1. Berg's at 750. Caboli's at 8-1. You have Fernley at 9-1. And Darderi at 25-1. Now, Fritz, I will admit, has a pretty tough quarter. You're looking at him having a bye in the first round, then the winner of Bergs, who made a final and lost to Diallo, but still having a decent grass season, and Fonseca, who has not done much on grass, but he's still dangerous no matter what surface you're playing on. So not exactly a great draw there for Fritz. Then you either have Caboli, Fernley, Giron, or Darderi, probably the winner of the Fernley and Caboli match. So not the best draw for Fritz when you're looking at the competition in that area. Fonseca in the second round, and then Caboli potentially in the quarters. Not ideal, I'll put it that way. Now, having said that, I do think I am going to take Fritz anyway at -110. I do think, even though we saw Fonseca look pretty good in his last grass event, did lose in the 3-set marathon to Caboli coincidentally, I do think Fritz, being a multiple-time champion with the great serve on grass and with Fonseca also not having the most grass experience, Bergs in theory could beat him. I think Fonseca's going to win, but I do think you can make an argument that Fonseca is still overvalued in the market because he really is not the kind of guy who has shown much on grass in the past. So based on that, I'll go with Fritz at -110. 3-time champion, great serve, won a grass title a couple weeks ago. Yes, he did flame out against Moutet immediately last week. It was fresh off a title. I'm fine with it, actually. Gives him about a week off. Think he'll look fine enough in the quarter for this one at -110. But I am not going to go with him by himself. I'm going to ignore some other guys. I'm going to skip over Giron. I don't think he's played that well recently. Fonseca has no value, having to beat Bergs, then Fritz, and then Caboli potentially after. Same with Bergs, not enough value for the matchup there in the first round. Caboli, though, and Fernley have some value if you think either guy could beat Fritz in the potential quarterfinal matchup. Fernley has been pretty good recently, but he's actually never made it to an ATP semi. That was his first ever quarterfinal last week, and he eventually did lose to Leheshka in straight sets. But Fernley has been good. Just don't think he's, I'd say, good enough to actually pull off the Cinderella run to the semi here. I'll go with Caboli at 8-1. Thought he played well last week in Halle. Did end up losing a competitive straight set match against Zverev. Did beat a couple of solid players on grass. Fonseca, he ended up beating, and I think that he's still a talented player. He's won multiple titles this year, so he's been in very good form. Those were on clay, but still ended up beating Arnaldi in the French Open, beat Cilic, lost to Zverev twice. So besides Cilic, he's actually been in good form. He beat Rublev in Hamburg. His, I'd say, current form, ignoring Zverev, he's been on a pretty good winning streak. And in Halle, beat Fonseca, beat Chapo, and eventually did lose a tough match to Zverev in Zverev's home country of Germany. I like his form. I think 8-1 is a good price for a guy that I think should end up beating Fernley, and I think that Caboli is in a good spot to keep his good form rolling. Zverev is not in his section, not in the event, so I think the path is actually decent for Caboli by comparison for the price. Give me him as well at 8-1 for my second choice for the first quarter. Moving on To the second quarter, this is going to be a bit more open. Mensik is the favorite at plus 150, despite not having much grass success in the past. Opelka is at 333. You have Fokina at 350. You have Vukic at 5-1. Duckworth at 12-1. You have Sang at 16-1. And Lofthagen, the two guys have no chance. Sang and Lofthagen, no chance at all. Now, for the actual draw itself, the draw for Mensik's not bad. He would have Opelka in the second round. I think Mensik's a bad matchup for Opelka. We know Opelka can't return to save his life. Mensik is tall. He can get returns in play. It would probably be breakers in a hypothetical matchup there in the second round. But I do think that Mensik is a better player, obviously, than Opelka. I'll go with him for the draw. The thing is, once again, it's a pretty weak quarter. The second lowest odds, Opelka, you could argue, is not even the greatest grass player on his, I'd say, career resume, despite having an elite serve, because he can't return. So I think Mensik is in a good spot here, actually, at 150. Fokina is interesting at 350. Problem is, he really has not played that much recently. In fact, I don't believe he's played since the French Open. So I think that he might be a little bit cold, not really known for being a great grass player. He's fine, but the fact is he was supposed to play in London, ended up dropping out, and then he was going to Eastbourne. Now he's facing off against a lucky loser, I believe, in the first round. So once again, I think it's basically a bye in the first round. He really should beat Sang, but I don't think he's good enough on clay. I mean, on hard court, or not even. Sorry, out of these, I think his worst surface is grass. I think he's better on clay and hard court compared to grass, and I think Mensik would do enough to beat him. So if you want to go for Fokina, you can at 350. I'm not going to. I think Mensik has value of plus 150. I'll take him there. But I know Mensik is not the greatest grass player based on his career. Still very young. His game should translate well to grass with the serve and the forehand. But I will go with a guy who's been in really bad form lately, been better recently since the transition to grass. I will go with Vukic at 5-1. Now, Vukic is in the same half section there of Fokina. He does have Duckworth in the first round. Both of them are qualifiers, but Vukic, I thought, looked a bit better in qualifying. I think Vukic is a better player, decent favorite in that first round matchup. His serve, though, can be dangerous on grass, and I do think that Fokina might struggle against that serve in the second round. Vukic, though, I think can make it interesting. 5-1, if he ends up facing off against Mensik in the hypothetical quarterfinals. Could be another matchup featuring breakers, and if that's the case, I think Vukic has a bit more experience on grass compared to Mensik. 5-1, I think it's a pretty good price. If he beats Duckworth, I think he has a decent chance of beating Fokina as well. Would he be favored in that matchup? I actually don't know. I think you can make an argument that Vukic could be a close dog to Fokina, but I don't see a big spread on grass. So based on that, give me the 5-1 on Vukic for the second choice for the second quarter. Moving on to the third quarter. Before we actually get into the third quarter, mine are brought to you by our sponsor, which is, of course, MyBookie, because MyBookie is a place for every sport. They have the MLB, they have WNBA, they have golf, they have football futures. They're also available to notifications. Use crypto for easy deposits, lightning fast payouts. When you sign up though for an account, use code SGPN to get a 100% match up to 1K. Terms and conditions of MyBookie.ag, promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Circa, because Circa is still hosting their Ultimate Financial Experience for a 12-person league in Vegas to draft their team to be treated as VIPs for this day. You get a limo ride from the airport, a 5K tab from Stadium Swim, and a hotel stay for you and your 11 league mates. You can always get 50% off everything, Circa Properties, with the code SGP15. And a reminder, last chance to enter the Circa Ultimate Fantasy Ball giveaway. Enter at sportscampus.com/Circa. That's how you enter the free contest. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Scam Podcast. Finished going through the first two quarters in Eastbourne. Time to keep it rolling with the third quarter. This one should also be pretty open. Humbert is the favorite at plus 175. You have Nori at 3-1. You have Perricard at 5-1. Hallis at 6-1. Sonego at 750. Moroz 9-1. And Bellucci at 12-1. A pretty solid quarter in terms of depth. I don't see any real superstars in the quarter. We know that Humbert has upside, but he's not really been in great form for the last couple of months. Of course, he is better on grass than clay, so he should pick it up at some point. But you're looking at a pretty competitive quarter from top to bottom. Now, for this immediate section, I do think you can argue that there is going to be some value on some long shots. If you want to go for Hallis, for example, if you want to go for even Bellucci as a super swing there, you can make a case for a decent amount of guys in the quarter if the draw breaks correctly for them. Now, I am going to take Humbert. I do like the buy aspect, which I think is needed when you have such a crazy quarter, and you're looking at Morozin and Sonego, two guys that can be solid on grass, but they're also very streaky, and I think Humbert's consistency will eventually extract enough mistakes from Sonego or Morozin. That could be a 3-set marathon as well, so I do like the rest advantage there for Humbert. And I did mention before that it could be a pretty difficult quarter to predict. Humbert has definitely handled tougher competition before, and I think that with his overall skill set, I think he should look pretty good on grass here in Eastbourne, but I'll go with him as my first choice here at plus 175. Now for the second option, I'm going to go chalky, actually. I am going to go with Norrie at 3-1. I think that Norrie is in a pretty good spot to actually play well in this event. You're looking at Norrie recently. He looked fine. We know that he's a former Wimbledon semifinalist. He was able to make a pretty respectable run in the French Open, played one match against Mensik in London, went to a third set and lost. But Norrie, historically speaking, is a solid grass player, and I do think Perricard, who's had a really rough go of it recently, I think it's a bad matchup for Perricard because we know the unforced error issue is definitely present, and Norrie's the opposite. He'll keep the ball in play as long as possible. Perricard, though, has been playing some poor tennis recently. Don't mind the draw there. I think that Halles could be interesting, but I do think that Norrie should be a difficult matchup on grass anyway, based on the actual, I'd say, rallying consistency that he possesses. So I don't mind going for value. I think Norrie has some value at 3-1. I know Perricard could be intimidating, but the form has not really been there. I think Norrie's consistency will eventually force enough mistakes from Perricard where he'll be able to find some openings, get the job done in this one. Give me Norrie at 3-1 as my second choice for the third quarter. Moving on to the final quarter, this is the Tommy Paul quarter. Now he's plus 140. You have Bublik at plus 187, Kekmanovic at 550, Borges at 9-1. Evans at plus 1,000. You have Jones at 16-1 and Comasagna at 22-1. Now, for the record, Bublik's off a title. There's a 0% chance he's playing this event. 0. So if you want to go based on a long shot value, Bublik is technically supposed to face off against Comasagna right now. So if you want to make the argument for Comasagna and make a case for a 22-1 shot, who had a pretty underrated run in Wimbledon last year, I don't hate it, I'll put it that way. Would I pick him to win the quarter? No. Is 22-1 the right price? No. Because Bublik, if he drops and gets replaced by a lucky loser, Comasagna's odds should plummet because he has a much easier matchup in the first round. Bublik, though, won a title, a pretty important one in Halle. Why the hell would he show up in Eastbourne? He's not going to play, so I do think Comasagna, you could argue, has some value if you want to go for the updated draw gamble at 22-1. Will he win the quarter? No. But I do think for CLV, if you want to make the argument for it, it makes sense. If you want to take a slight flyer on Comasagna, I'm not going to do that, though. For the draw, I like Paul's draw quite a bit. I think the quarter is kind of a joke, to be honest. He has a bye in the first round, then Evans or Kekmanovic, which could be tricky, but Paul, I think, is a solid player. Did make the final here a couple years ago. And Evans, we saw have a decent run there in London, lost to Nakashima in straight sets. He's been streaky for the last couple of months, and I think Paul's better. So I'll go with him. No guarantee he ends up beating Kekmanovic anyway. But Paul's better on grass than both those guys. Borges, I'm not really afraid of. Pennington is a wild card who's kind of an unknown. You have Bublik and Comasagna. There's definitely a path for Comasagna to make it into the quarterfinals. So 22-1, I actually don't hate. I might add that to the card. I actually think that for the price point, there's an argument to be made, especially if Bublik ends up dropping out. So actually I'm going to add Paul and Comasagna to the fourth quarter options. Will I pick Comasagna to win the quarter? Realistically, Paul should beat him, but you might end up getting a good hedging opportunity midway through, or if Paul gets upset, you might end up getting a pretty decent draw. But he was good in Wimbledon, and the fact is, once again, his section is Borges, who's not very good on grass. You have a relative unknown wild card British kid in Jones, and then you also have, once again, an opportunity for a lucky loser if Bublik does drop out. So I like the draw quite a bit for Comasagna. At that price, it's insane. 22-1 I like, and I like him as a player in general. I'll go with him as my second choice for the fourth quarter. Moving on, though, to the outrights to win the actual event. For the odds here, you have what is a pretty interesting, I'd say, collection of favorites, because you have Fritz at around 330, Paul's at 550, Bublik's at 6-1, Mensik is 8-1, Umber's 10-1, Fakina's 14-1, Pericard 16-1, Nori 16-1, Giron 18-1, Berg's 20-1, Opelka 20-1, Fonseca 20-1. You have Kekmanovic 22-1, Hallis 28-1, Arnaldi 28-1, Fernley 40-1. You kind of get the point. If you want to go for the super duper long shot, you have Caboli 80-1. You have Comasagna at 250-1. Now, am I going to use those prices? Probably not, because you can shop around and find better numbers. Now, I am going to go pretty chalky for a couple of guys, but I did leave the door open for a Cinderella run, or at least based on odds, because it is the final event before a Grand Slam for the entire field here. So you always have to wonder if players will be fully invested mentally and physically in the event, or are they looking ahead, trying to stay fit? Maybe they'll even retire in a match to make sure they're fully healthy for significantly more prize money in the Grand Slam coming up in about a week or so. So keep that in mind. You tend to see a couple of unexpected winners in the events right before Grand Slams. So keep that in mind. I am going to go with some long shots in, or at least I think some intriguing options for the outrights here. Now for Fritz, said before, multiple-time champion. Do I like the price? Honestly, not really. I think his draw kind of sucks for him. I think it's a tough draw. A buy, then Fonseca or Bergs, then maybe Caboli, same half as Mensik as well. It might sound crazy because Fritz has won it 3 times. I'm passing on Fritz. I just don't see enough value at that price for that draw. If you want to take him, that's fine. I did take him to some degree to win the quarter, so at least if he ends up making a decent run, we do get something in return. But I don't like the draw. Fritz, we know, can be very good in general. He could also suck in general. And the issue is trying to find which tournaments he actually shows up for and which ones he no-shows. And it was on full display for the last couple weeks, winning the title in Stuttgart and immediately losing to Moutet on grass the week after. So based on that, I'm going to skip Fritz. I don't like the price and the draw. So with that combination, I'll go elsewhere. Now for the second choice, for the outrights, you do see Paul at around 6-1. I will take that at 6-1. Said before, his quarter is a joke. The only quarter where I took one guy by himself, that was Paul, by Evans or Kekmanovic, then either Borges, Pinnington, Bublik technically, who will drop out, and Comasagna. So you have a bunch of unimpressive options mixed with Paul, who's a former finalist here. Hell yeah. Give me Paul at 6-1. I love that price. I love the quarter play. I'll go with that as well. So give me those two for the, once again, plays for Paul, the quarter, and the double up with him winning the event. I'll go with Mensik as well at 9-1. I think his game, you could argue, is going to be a little bit dangerous to bet on grass because he's still trying to figure it out, but his draw is also a joke. His quarter is Opelka, who can't return to save his life. He had 0 break points against Rinderknecht in the last match that he had in London. You have Vukic, you have Duckworth, you have Sang and Fakina, and Mensik has a bye. It's a very nice draw for that quarter. And if I think that Fritz could be an upset alert, you might get a decent path into the semis to make it into the final. He won a 1,000 event earlier this year, so I know that he can definitely handle the environment. The question is the grass, will he be able to transition? The serve should be good. I do think he's a solid overall player, and I do think he is still a very dangerous option on any surface because he's also good on clay. So give me Mensik at 9-1 for what is, in my opinion, a pretty joke. I'd say it's a joke of a quarter, if we're being honest here. I'll go with that at 9-1. For my long shot, though, I will go with Cam Norrie. Now, I do think there's some value based on his overall draw as well. I'm targeting some weak quarters, and I do think Norrie's quarter does check that box as well. You have Pericard in the first round, could be tricky, but I think Norrie's a bad matchup for him, and he's a lot more comfortable on grass than Pericard is. You're looking at Bellucci and Hallis, who you could argue maybe one of them could beat Norrie, but I do think that Norrie has a bit of an advantage based on the home crowd. I was going to take one guy from England just for the home support, but I think that Norrie at 22-1, for a guy that made a Wimbledon semi a couple years ago, he's been playing better recently. He took Djokovic to 3 sets in the clay event Geneva about a couple weeks ago. He faced off against Djokovic again in the French Open. He's been playing well. Now, I know that he ended up losing to Mensik in 3 sets in his first grass match of the season. I'm fine with it. Mensik's a good player. He went to 3 sets, but I do think the actual draw is pretty nice. And I am going to remind everybody that Norrie is also in the top half. So if he's in the bottom half. So you get to avoid Fritz, who's won 3 titles here. If he does catch fire again, he can, in theory, beat Paul, but I think his draw is not that bad. 22-1 for a guy that has a pretty solid grass resume in his career, and a guy that rallies well on grass especially. I think it's a very good price for a home country guy. Give me Norrie at 22-1 as my final choice for the outright. So once again, briefly going through the outrights for the quarters and the title odds for the Eastbourne tournament. For the first quarter, I'm going to go with Fritz at minus 110, and I will go with Kaboli at 8-1. For the second quarter, I am going to go with Mensik at plus 150. I'll go with Vukic at 5-1. And for the third quarter, I will go with Humbert at 175. I'll go with Norrie at 3-1 as well. Thought about Humbert to win the title, by the way. Didn't really like the odds based on current form. I thought Norrie's odds were better, so I'll go with that instead. For the fourth quarter, you're looking at Paul and you're looking at Comasagna. Paul plus 140, Comasagna 22-1. Solely gambling on the pretty strong premise that Bublik drops out after winning a pretty important event in Halle on Sunday. He might have a pretty easy draw for a 22-1 shot for the quarter. And he also had a good run in Wimbledon last year. For the outrights to win the event, I'm going to go with Paul at 6-1. I'm going to go with Mensik at 9-1. And I'll go with Norrie at 22-1 as my long shot. Moving on to Mallorca for the preview here. I see a couple of people in the comment section. I see Uneducated talking about how Bublik was there for the comedy. Now he's there for the entertainment and the skill. Yeah, Bublik's a very talented player. He just has never wired properly. He's starting to get there, which is definitely nice to see. But then again, we also know that he can easily implode during the hard court season. He'll lose in the first round, 3 straight matches, and make it into the fourth round of the U.S. Open. So Bublik, I don't want to say this is a new leaf for him, where he's taking tennis more seriously 100% of the time. But he looked good, so definitely nice to see. I see Rolf also stopping by, talking about how I've been crushing it lately. Hopefully you've been cashing with me, Rolf. I'll try to keep rolling here for the 2 events right before Wimbledon. So for Mallorca, you have Tabilo, who ended up beating Offner in the final last year. Eubanks, who beat Manarino 2 years ago. Tsitsipas beat Agut, and you have Medvedev, who beat Querrey. Now, we've actually been very good in the event historically. We called Tabilo last year, who I think was around like 18-1 or like 15-1, got a great price on Tabilo. And 2 years ago, we called Eubanks, I believe, and I think we had like 20-1, 25-1 or something. So we've actually won 2 decent-sized outrights over the last 2 years in the event. So we've done very well in Mallorca in years past. Now, hopefully, we keep rolling again for the 3rd straight year, and we'll go from there. Now, for the first quarter, once again, luckily, we have odds for the quarters as well. For the first quarter, this is going to be the Shelton quarter of the event. So starting off with the first quarter here, you have him having a bye. He's also in the same quarter as Tien and Angle, and you have Altmaier, who beat Fognini. They did play 2 matches on Sunday just because they were short on courts. So you saw Altmaier beat Fognini in 3 sets. But Shelton is the favorite here, plus 120. Moutet is at 3-1. Altmaier's 333. Tien is 7-1. Angle's 12-1. And Martinez is 25-1. Now, Shelton has been quite underwhelming so far on grass. Made a decent run in Stuttgart, ended up losing to Zverev, and then he ended up losing immediately to Rinderknech in the first round of London. We'll see how he looks in this one, but I think plus 120 is a decent price for a guy whose draw is very favorable. By Tien and Angle are not proven at all, 2 very young players, and you have Altmaier or probably Moutet into the quarters. It's a very nice draw for Shelton. I'll take him at plus 120. However, I'm not going to take him by himself because Shelton can leave the door open to being a clown. Give me Moutet at 3-1. He, I know, can also be a head case, but he's played pretty well on grass. Did end up beating Fritz, for example. So he can beat the big serving American, and I do think he can beat another one in this event, hypothetically. But I think 3-1 is a pretty good price for a guy that's been looking pretty decent on grass so far. I'll take him as well at 3-1 for the first quarter. Moving on to the second quarter. This is going to be the Mickelson quarter. He's plus 162. You have Agut at 4-1, former finalist. Hijikata is 450. Bonzi is at 450. Echeverry is at 650. Bernard Tomic made the draw, which is very fun. Nice to see him back here at 14-1 as he beat Kovacevic, I believe, in the qualifying match on Sunday. And you have Holt at 14-1, also went through qualifying. Now, for the second quarter, Mickelson's a guy who I'd say I'm lower on than most people because I just don't think his serve is good enough for a guy that tall. The serve has to improve, but the draw is really not that bad for Mickelson. You're looking at Bonzi or Holt. I think it should be Bonzi, who has not really played much grass so far, and I think that Bonzi can be pretty streaky at times. Mickelson is a buy, though. Decent draw for him. I thought about taking Bautista Agut, who's a former finalist who was in good form, beat Rune this past week before losing to Alcaraz in straight sets. But my concern is the age, the recovery time, and also the potential back-to-back days, which I've talked about before for older players. Agut might be really good if you give him time to prepare and some time to recover. But once he starts playing back-to-back days, at this stage in his career, he gets into trouble. And we saw that against Alcaraz in the last matchup. But I went down the calendar. He has lost a bunch of matches in a row when playing in back-to-back days. So I'll go with that trend once again. I will skip Agut. Thought about it. Also as Echeverry in the first round. Very tough draw for both guys. I think that's kind of a coin flip match. Echeverry is not really great on grass, but he was good in Halle. I think you're looking at what could be a marathon, and I do think with Tomic and with Hijikata, who I think are not really worth much. Tomic, it's fun to see him here. He's also one of the OG clowns on tour. I'm not going to back him, but I think I make the argument that it really does open up a good opportunity for Mickelson to find a path here at plus 162. The question is, do I actually take Agut with him? Because I'm not high on Mickelson. I'm not that high on Echeverry on grass. I think that Rublev choked. And I think the courts here should play a lot slower than they did in Halle, which is the fastest grass court, besides maybe Stuttgart, on the entire tour. So the question is, do I want to go with Mickelson by himself, or do I actually hold my nose and take Agut at 4-1 based on his form that he showed in London? I think I'll do it. It's 4-1. I don't hate it. He's a favorite over Echeverry. If he loses to Echeverry, I'll be a bit annoyed, but I think that it's worth something. So I think I'll also add Agut to the quarter picks here. So once again, give me Mickelson at 162 and give me Agut at 4-1 as my two choices for the second quarter. Moving on to the third quarter. This is the Greek Sport quarter. So we have not really heard from him in a while, but he's back. Greek Sport is at plus 137. Diallo is at 225. De Gire is at 375, who did end up beating Boo in the first round match on Sunday. Quinn barely got by Capriva in qualifying today. Munar's at 750 off the marathon loss to Alcaraz, and you have Ugo Carabelli at 18-1. Now, I feel like most people might be tempted by Munar as a sleeper based on what he showed in the last event he was in. However, I need to see a bit more sample on grass, and the draw's not great. Taking on Diallo in the first round, he did win a grass title a couple weeks ago. Diallo did not look great in the last event, went to 3 against Harris, then got killed against Leheshka, but that loss aged pretty well because Leheshka made it to the final and took a set off of Alcaraz. Diallo got some time off, though, time to recover. Should be a fun matchup, but I think that for the actual value, I think it's on Greek Sport. He's in the same half of the quarter as Quinn, who did not look impressive at all against Capriva in the matchup on Sunday in qualifying, and Ugo Carabelli, who is really not known for grass at all, and he lost to Opelka in straight sets a couple weeks ago on grass, or about a week ago or so. So no grass resume for Ugo Carabelli, who's a clay court specialist. I think it's a great draw for Greek Sport. Great serve. He can rally. He can volley. You know my thoughts on him. He's a very solid player. Might get some breakers involved in his matches, as always, but I do think there's some value at plus 137. I'll take him. Nobody else thought the quarter was pretty weak. I'll go with Greek Sport at 137. Thought about maybe taking a flyer on Munar, but once again, the draw is not great against Diallo than De Gire, so I'll pass on those guys. Think that immediate part of the quarter is a bit difficult. I'll capitalize on the buy, Quinn, and Ugo Carabelli section of the quarter instead. Give me Greek Sport by himself at plus 137. Moving on to the fourth quarter. This is going to be a tough quarter, at least based on some talent here. You have Felix at a plus 110. So Fulin at 5-1. You have Rinderknech at 5-1 off a pretty good run in London. Medjedovic at 550. Basavretti at 850, who went through qualifying. Mueller at 9-1, who actually had a decent, I can't even say decent grass season, but overall, I'm going to give him a pass for Halle. He showed up and played Bublik in the first round. Yeah, Bublik won the entire tournament, so not really Mueller's fault. He just ran into a buzzsaw in the first round of that event. And De Zoomer at 20-1, who has no chance and got injured against Herbert a couple weeks ago on grass and retired. De Zoomer has no chance. So for the fourth quarter, For the draw here, Felix as the favorite. His draw is not great, but not terrible. Rinderknech could be dangerous if the serve is on, but after making a deep run in London, I kind of expect Rinderknech to crash a bit in this event. Should beat the Zoomer. Felix should beat him, though, so I think Felix should win that one. The other section of the draw is interesting because Moore, Safulin, Basaveretti, and Medjedovic are all pretty volatile players, and I do think with the youth involved with a couple of those guys, you might see some unpredictability, and if one guy made a deep run, it would not really surprise me. But the point is, I do think Felix has to be played at plus 110. I'm not a Felix guy, you know this, but I do think his draw is pretty nice. Rinderknech had a pretty deep tournament run to the quarters, and I feel like Felix should beat him in a hypothetical matchup there. Give me Felix at plus 110. But for the top half, Medjedovic has not been very good. You're looking at Basaveretti, who went to qualifying, but do I trust him to beat Felix in a match here? Probably not. The serve's not good enough. Mueller, who could be decent on grass, or Safulin. I'll take Safulin at 5-1. His serve can be dangerous. He's decent on grass. I think he can make some noise, and I think that 5-1 is a decent price for a guy that's actually played an ATP final before. I think you're looking at, once again, it's mostly me not wanting to trust Felix by himself. So I would have taken Felix alone, but I wanted to take something in case Felix ends up self-destructing again. Give me Safulin at 5-1, who I think out of the four players I mentioned, Medjedovic, Basaveretti, Mueller, and Safulin, I think he's the best player on grass out of those four. So I'll take the long shot option there at 5-1. Moving on to the outrights to win the actual event. For the odds to win it, you have Felix at plus 400 or so. Shelton is at around 400 as well. Mickelson is 8-1. Diallo is at 850. Griekspoor is 9-1. Moutet is 12-1. Altmaier is 16-1. Safulin is 20-1. Agut is 20-1. Rinderknech is 20-1. Medjedovic 22-1. Bonzi 22-1. You kind of get the point. Now, I do want to point out, even though I said before that this is usually the type of week where you go for long shots because you're expecting a lot of the top-end guys to look ahead to Wimbledon. The problem is with the tour nowadays, with Sinner and with Alcaraz dominating every Grand Slam, I don't think anybody on tour thinks they'd actually win any of these events. I think it's mostly Sinner and Alcaraz who are just dominating the tour. A little bit of Djokovic in there, and Zverev, who thinks he can before choking every time, and Medvedev, who has made some deep runs in Grand Slams before eventually choking. I feel like the star guys should be, I'd say, focused for this event as a chance to get some, I'd say, important grass matches under their belt and also trying to win a title, since Wimbledon will not be happening for any of the guys in this field. But even though I am not the biggest fan of Felix, I did swallow my pride. I took him at 430. The quarter I thought was too weak. If he gets by Rinderknech, he really should cruise through whoever else is in that quarter. He's in the same half as Griekspoor, which could be a bit tricky, but I do think him being at around plus 430 has some value. I'll go with him there. I did go Shelton as well at 470, who's burned us a couple of times. I get it, but his quarter is absolutely hilarious. He has a bye, then Tien or Engel, then Altmaier or Moutet. It's tough to find a better draw than Mickelson or probably Agut in the semifinals. I mean, what more do you want from a draw at 470? I'll take Shelton as my second choice, and last but not least, give me Griekspoor at 9-1. I think Griekspoor is a good enough player on grass to, I'd say, make some noise and beat Felix. He can beat Shelton in theory. I think that he's a guy who has a very, very good serve. The return game could be problematic, but the fact is he did win a grass title in Den Bosch 2 years ago, so he has won a grass title before. 9-1's a great price. The quarter's pretty favorable, has a bye, then Quinn or Ugo Carabelli. He avoids Diallo, Munar, or De Gea until one of them make it to the quarters. I love the draw for Griekspoor. I think it's a great draw. I'll take him at 9-1 for my final choice of the outrights on that one. Anyway, so once again, the picks for the outrights in Mallorca, the lock is going, or sorry, not the lock, sorry. First quarter, I'm going to go with Shelton at plus 120, and I'll go with Moutet at 3-1. For the second quarter, I am going to go with Mickelson at 162, and I will go with Agut at 4-1. For the third quarter, I'm going to go with Griekspoor by himself at plus 137, the only guy I'm taking by himself in the quarter. And for the fourth quarter, I will go with Felix at plus 110, and I will go with Safulin at 5-1, just in case Felix implodes. So I'll go with that as a long shot flyer towards the end. For the outrights to win the event, I will swallow my pride and go with Felix at 430. I will go with Shelton at a 470, and I will go with Greek Sport at 9-1. Let's go wrap it up, though. For the hours, now it's time for the lock and dog picks of the first round. Before we get to that, the reminder, they're brought to you by our sponsor, which is Underdog Fantasy, because they are doing their Underdog Best Ball Mania, which is happening all summer long, giving away $15 million in prizes, including $2 million to first place. No waiver wire, no arguments about trades. Best Ball is the best way to play fantasy football. Underdog's also a great place to play Pick'em. And a reminder, you can also sign up for your new account with the code SGPN to get a special pick and a first-time visit offer up to 1K in bonus credits. Underdog Fantasy promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Rhythm, because you've heard us talk about Rhythm before. They dropped a game-changing feature called Power Trends. And to take the patterns, Rhythm's models have consistently have a high ROI. They also are available in locations, and a reminder that you can use it on the App Store. Once again, from basically anywhere, you could use the Power Trends, which are updated every day, exclusive to Rhythm. No touts, no noise, just clean it back picks. Download the app, check out Power Trends, start betting smarter. And a reminder, you can try it out for free for a week, but it's a 7-day free trial. Go to sportsgame.com/RATHMM. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Finish going through the outrights in Eastbourne and Mallorca. Time to move on into the lock and dog picks. For the lock, I'm going to go to the matchup between Moutet and Martinez. Now, last, I'd say, preview episode, we did fade Martinez on grass. We'll do so again. We are going to go with the magician Moutet. We'll go with Moutet in straight sets at minus 129. Moutet's been playing pretty well lately. Did lose to Fernley in 3 sets, but he won 3 of his last 4 grass matches, beat Fritz, which is good to see, who was off a title at the time. Martinez, though, same exact bullet point as last week with an updated stat. Martinez has really not succeeded in grass ever in his career. He has lost 7 straight grass matches. He has not won a grass match since June 2022. It's been 3 years since he's won a grass match. We faded him against Echeverry last week. He got curb stomped in that matchup. Moutet might not make it easy because his serve is not great, but he's, objectively speaking, much better than Martinez on grass, who's been a mess as a clay specialist on grass. Give me Moutet in straight sets. He also faced off against Martinez on hard court a couple months ago, and he did win in straight sets. So based on that, then the price is pretty cheap, fading a very bad grass player who has not won a grass match in 7 years. I mean, sorry, he's lost 7 straight grass matches. He's not won a grass match in 3 years. Give me Moutet in straight sets at minus 129 as my lock. For my dog, I'm going to go to the matchup between Basaveretti and Medjedovic. Should be a fun matchup. Might go 3 sets. Faced off in U.S. Open qualifying last year, and Medjedovic did win in 3. But I will go with the dog here. Give me Basaveretti on the money line at plus 136. The price just seems too high to me. Basaveretti went through qualifying, beat the Zanschulp in a marathon, and then ended up beating a clay specialist in Navone in straight sets in the match on Sunday. But he's been looking fine on grass. Not much of a resume on grass. Medjedovic, though, has played 1 grass match this season, and he ended up losing in straight sets to Walton. So the point is, I don't think Medjedovic is really in great form. He's fine on grass, not amazing. Basaveretti, though, has played a couple matches on the courts here in qualifying. He looked good, and I do think it should be a close matchup either way. But I do think the play style for both guys are so different that it opens up a door of possibilities for Basaveretti. Win or lose, the match will be won or lost, courtesy of Medjedovic's racket. Basaveretti is a rallier, tries to keep the ball in play, tries to not self-destruct, and he will try to extract errors from his opponent with consistency. That's exactly how you can beat Medjedovic, who can be a head case at times, does self-destruct, can easily punt points away with really no pressure at all. And Basaveretti, who has been successful in qualifying by standing on the baseline, keeping points along, and trying to wait out errors, that can work against Medjedovic. So I do think this price is pretty big for Medjedovic, who has not done much on grass this season. A guy has not done much at all this season. And for a guy that has a lot of unforced error issues in the past, the serve is much better for Medjedovic compared to Basaveretti, which can be the equalizer. So if the serve is on, he might have some problems in return games. But I do think Basaveretti has proven he can handle the firepower on grass as he was able to make it into the main draw here. But the point is, Medjedovic, I think, is a bit too volatile to be this big of a favorite. I'll go with Bosforeti as the dog here for the play. So once again, the lock and dog for the episode is going to be the lock featuring Mutet in straight sets against Martinez at minus 129. For the dog, I'm going to go with Bosforeti moneyline against Medjedovic at plus 136 and wrap it up for the show. Back once again for the quarterfinals here in Eastbourne and Mallorca. Till next time, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.